Why, hello there. Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave. My pronouns are he, him. Well, it made Dave Riedel. I don't know why I forgot my last name there. My pronouns are he, him. I write for the Chicago Reader, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. Why, hello there, everybody. Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is David Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write for the Chicago Reader, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and am a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
Did you do the salute, Evan? Oh, you're doing it now. Okay.
I did.
Good.
Yeah. No, I did, but I was kind of like this, so I didn't know I don't know if anyone saw it.
I saw it, but it was kind of like a wind-up.
Yes. And for those of you listening to this, because it's a podcast, Evan just saluted twice. So, this week on the show, we're going to talk about a couple of movies, like always. But before we do that, we want to tell you about a movie we talked about. We talked about The Andromeda Strain for our Patreon, our special bonus episode that we do every week. And we decided to talk about The Andromeda Strain because a patron suggested that to us, said, hey, watch The Andromeda Strain, the 1971 sci-fi thriller, ? You decide by listening to our conversation. If you're a patron, that's available over at patreon.com/spoilerpiece right now. And if you're not a patron, please consider becoming one. We would love it so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. The two movies we're talking about tonight. We're talking about Origin, written and directed by Ava DuVernay, based on Isabel Wilkerson's book. And we are going to be talking about I.S.S., which stands for something, which we'll talk about later. International Space Station. That's what it's not a big fucking mystery.
We don't have to be coy about what it stands for.
Well, I was trying to think of something that would be more. I was thinking of, I was trying to think of something that would be more fun than International Space Station. So, but I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head because it's just one of those days.
It's simple, stupid.
Yeah, it's simple, stupid. Right. So, Origin. I said already that this is written and directed by Ava DuVernay. Stars Aunjanue, Ellis-Taylor, John Bernthal, and Niecy Nash-Betts. And here is your one-sentence IMDb summary. Let's see if this is a well-written sentence or not. Here we go. The unspoken system that has shaped America and chronicles how lives today are defined by a hierarchy of human divisions. That is not a sentence. That is a clause. But that's okay. That is true. It's this is a movie that is sort of an adaptation of Isabel Wilkerson's book Cast, and also a rumination. Fuck is wrong with me? It's also like a biopic sort of her story as she's writing, as she's researching and writing the book, while also dealing with the death of her husband and her mother within several months of each other.
And then her cousin.
Oh, right.
Who's her best friend.
And then her cousin, who's her best friend. God, I don't want to forget her cousin, who's great. So anyway, this is I don't know. This is a very nuanced. What am I trying to say? I liked this a lot, though I'm not sure I could tell you why. I will say all of the performances are stellar, except for Nick Offerman as the Trump supporter. I just didn't believe him when he was doing that. Mostly because I was like,
is that because he's not in real life?
No, well, maybe. I think it was also, he's got that he sort of plays like kind of lovable grumps, or he has played lovable grumps.
Yes.
And the first thing I thought when I saw him was like, hey, is that Nick Offerman in a Make America Great Again cap? It is Nick Offerman in a Make America Great Again cap. The fuck is this? It took me out of the movie instantly. And then I was sort of reeled back in by Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor's performance. I mean, I just have to say, what a performance that she gives.
It's stunning.
She is exceptional. And I wish I had seen this before we did voting, because this is the second time. I said Andrew Scott I would have chosen probably for All of Us Strangers. And I may have chosen Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor for Origin had I seen both of these movies before our deadline, which Evan even moved back a week, and I still didn't get all the movies watched.
I mean, there's only so many hours in a day and hundreds and hundreds of movies.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, this was in my top 10. I adored it. I was delighted to rewatch it because I loved it just as much on a second watch.
Yeah.
And a large part of it is because Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor is phenomenal in it. But I'm also a huge fan of Ava DuVernay's work. I've seen almost all of her work, her TV shows, her documentaries, her narrative films, and I think she's an exceptional filmmaker. I think she has such a strong vision, and she really weaves social justice and emotional narratives together so well. And I think that's what it's interesting when you said, Dave, that you didn't know if you could explain why you liked this, because it is such an undefinable, uncategorizable film.
It's unusual.
It's very unusual. Yeah. It's unusually paced. It's unusually edited. The whole thing is just very unusual. And like there's a mixture of kind of surreal scenes of Isabel like
mourning,
people
grieving.
Mourning and grieving, but that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say she's seeing people who are historical figures, but she is also seeing the people who have died as she's grieving. So yeah, it is this. So it's a mixture of kind of almost like a documentary in a way of like, you know, history and fact finding, but also very personal grief along with these surreal moments. So it is just this very interesting way of telling a story, but I think it's extremely resonant, extremely powerful. I cry repeatedly throughout this film, the first time I saw it and the second time I saw it. But yeah, I'm so glad that you liked it too.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, the closest comparison I can make to any movie is imagine if adaptation were not a comedy, a weird comedy, but a comedy nonetheless. Because it has a similar. I mean, it's not like, you know, splitting your personality in two and blah 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 blah, but it is that in the sense that it feels partially documentary, partially adaptation of the book. Although, I mean, it's not an entire adaptation. It's more like it takes, you know, the large beats from Cast and dramatizes some of them and also focuses on the research that goes on behind them. One of the fascinating things were those two American couples in Germany, or rather the one American couple in Germany who meet the other ones when they come back to the States.
Yes.
One black couple, one white couple, and they decide to go down to the South. This is a real story. I put the book in
the anthropologists.
I put my book in the Amazon queue already. And they decide to go undercover as, you know, black and white people in the American South. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, two other things. One, I did not know there was a dramatization of Trayvon Martin's murder in here. I want to make sure I use the right word. Which is, because does that open the movie? Is that the first thing?
It does.
Okay.
Well, not the murder. So
right, he's in the convenience store.
Right, and where he's being followed. So yeah, so Trayvon Martin does open the film, but it cuts away, and then it cuts to Isabel and her life, and then later in the film,
it goes to the assault.
We see when she's listening to the 911 call that a neighbor made, and then we see the murder.
And I'm pretty sure it's the real call too, the George Zimmerman call. Anyway.
Yeah.
So. Well, I wondered what was going on at the beginning, but then when he comes up to the counter in the convenience store and there's a bag of Skittles, I was just like, "Oh no!" I mean, I saw the Skittles and I was like, "That's what this is." And then he pulls his hood up before he goes out because it's raining, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to watch this poor child get murdered." Which, thankfully, when you finally do see it, it cuts away. This is kind of piggybacking on what you said about the editing, the unusual editing, because it's going back between her imagining it via the phone call and also an on-screen dramatization of it too. Anyway.
Yeah, that editor has worked with her a lot. He did the editing for the great documentary 13th. He did the editing for Middle of Nowhere, which is one of my favorite films. It's such a fantastic film.
Yeah. Yeah. When we say unusual editing, we should mention good unusual.
Yes. Yeah, because I mean, and we talked about this a little bit in our top 10 favorites episode about how it's a dense book. Like, it's an academic nonfiction
Yeah.
book. And to take that and adapt it, and to take the main points about how racism is not that it's not the culprit, but her thesis is that racism is insufficient to describe what is happening to Black people in the US, because it kicks off with Trayvon Martin because an editor wants her to write about Trayvon Martin's murder. And she ends up coming up with all of these ideas that are connecting about how police brutality and how racism, how it connects to the Holocaust of Jewish people, and how it connects to the caste system of the Dalits in India, and how really caste is the culprit, not racism. Racism is just one tool of caste, which is about oppressing people, because in India, she argues they're all the same race, but yet they're treated differently, horribly so. And so, yeah. So anyway, so taking those very academic ideas from her book and then fusing it with Isabel Wilkerson's personal life of her tragedies and her search as a writer, I just think is brilliant. I think everything about this is such a vital, necessary film to see, but it's also such a beautiful film on humanity and grief. And I love this film so
Well, and
much.
it's also, we've also mentioned, we haven't, considering how much you and I love rom-coms, and this is not a com, but we should mention the very tender love story at the heart of this movie.
Yes.
You know, her,
Yes.
you know, flashing back to when she meets her husband, John Bernthal, and, you know, to the night he died, and all told out of sequence, of course. I, you know, knew that her husband had died. I didn't know that her best friend and cousin had died.
Yeah.
But yeah, it shows this very just, I mean, John Bernthal is a dynamic actor, but just to see him play just like
Yes.
a caring, gentle, sweet person, I was like, wow, that's a stretch even for you, man.
But he does
he's
it
so good.
so well.
He's so good.
He's so good in
Yeah.
it. Yeah, he's a really beautiful soul in this. And you're right, and you're absolutely right. He is dynamic, and he's always so charismatic and magnetic and such a force on screen. And he really takes a back seat in this film in like the best possible way. And just, you're right, it is such a tender, beautiful, yearning love story. It's so beautiful to see.
And I just want to mention, like, all of the people in this movie, like some major movie stars, just some people that you've seen, you know, before, and you're like, oh yeah. But like Blair Underwood shows up for 5 minutes as the editor. Audra McDonald's in it for 5 minutes. Stephanie March is in it. We already mentioned, actually, I think we were talking about it off mic, Nick Offerman, Donna Mills. It's just like Connie Nielsen.
Vera Farmiga.
Yes, Vera Farmiga in like the tiniest of tiny roles, playing her editor, who at first, when Ava DuVernay, when Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor is explaining her book concept, when it's still just a very loose idea to Vera Farmiga, I thought she was just telling some random woman. I didn't realize it was her editor.
Me too.
I was like, why are you telling this woman this story,
why are you going into
who
such
clearly
detail?
doesn't like believe what you're telling her? And then when she says, hey, I don't really see the connection, but if you can make that, I'm like, oh, it's her editor. Like,
right.
Such a dope. Oh, man. Yeah. So anyway, I just really, I was going to say got a kick out of this. What a fucking wrong way to say it. But yeah, it's just, it's good. It's really good.
I'm so glad you liked it too. I think it's a really beautiful piece of filmmaking.
Did you think I was?
I think it's just.
Did you
stunning.
think I was going to be like, it's crap or something like that?
No, I thought you would appreciate it, but I didn't know if it would connect because it's kind of a weird film. And I've said this multiple times. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just it's an unusually structured film, which could potentially not work, I
Mhm.
guess. But I mean, but for me personally watching this, I don't know how this wouldn't emotionally destroy every person
Yeah.
watching it, because I think it's brilliant. I think it's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Well, every time, I mean, just for example, her husband dies very early on in the film, and then every time they cut back to him, it's like a really sweet memory, except for, of course, the night that he
Yeah.
died, which, which is
Mhm.
a little cliche, but all right. They had an argument, a rare argument the night he died, and then he apologized to her before, the end of the evening, and she says something to the effect of, and he offered to make me dinner, which was kind of his way of saying sorry when he felt like he did something wrong, and it's just a very sweet moment that you can just tell that, even though these 2 people just had a real disagreement, they still it's not
Mhm.
a lot of times I feel like in movies, disagreements between couples are portrayed as like, the catalyst for like um, that's a technical term, and this is just kind of like what happens when you're in a long-term relationship. It's like sometimes you get really mad
Yeah.
at each other, and then
Right.
you're like,
You get on each other's nerves,
"Man,"
it's
it's
gonna
like,
happen, or you're gonna
exactly. It's like,
disagree.
"You really pissed me off 10 minutes ago, but I love you. You want some fucking
Mhm.
lasagna? Let's go." He doesn't make her
Yep.
lasagna, but, that's the first thing I thought of. Uh, there is a character in there who it's Audra McDonald's husband who's like, "You should come over more often, Isabel, because that's when I get lasagna."
Yes, there is lasagna in the
Yeah.
movie, you're not wrong.
Um, yeah.
But, I'm really glad you brought up that scene, because I think that's a really sweet scene, and it's a small scene, but it also reminds me of the scene which gutted me, but it's also kind of a small scene, when this part's not the small scene, but when Isabel is in India and she's talking to people
Mm,
and she's doing research on the Dalits for her book, and she's getting text messages from her cousin's husband because she's dying. And he's like, she's getting worse. She's getting worse. I think tonight's going to be the night she goes. And she talks to her cousin and says like all these really lovely things, kind of like ushering her into her death. And that's a lovely scene, but that's not even the scene that gutted me, even though it is sad. It's the scene afterwards where then where it rewinds and we see her cousin, played wonderfully by Niecy Nash Betts, who says, and Isabel's saying like, maybe I shouldn't go to India, maybe I should stay here with you. And she's like, no, you need to go, you need to do research, you need to write, and then you need to come back and you need to write your book, because people need to hear what you have to say. It's important. And the way she delivers it and the way it's said is just, I'm like, I was just a sobbing mess. I'm like, oh my God, that's so nice and so lovely and so supportive. Like, what a kind gesture. It was just, and I think that's the thing. I think I might have said this when when I talked about why I love this movie so much. As much as this movie is about discrimination and oppression and racism, and it 100% is, it's also about kindness. It's
yes.
about the kindness in your personal life, as well as how that transcends and translates to kindness on a global scale. And I think we need more reminders of that and more art about kindness and how valuable and pivotal and vital that is. And it's just, I love this movie so
Yeah.
much.
Yes, the older I get, the more I appreciate kindness. So, um,
Ditto.
anyway, I don't really have much more to say. Megan, do you have any closing thoughts on Origin?
Just that I think every step of this film is just brilliantly done. I think the tone, the acting, the editing, I think the score is beautiful.
Yes.
Um, I love the merging of history and the present and the way it switches back and forth. And listening to Ava DuVernay talk about the making of this film is also really fascinating. I've been following her for a very, very long time, and I was very lucky to meet her very briefly after she did Middle of Nowhere long time ago. And she was extremely gracious and lovely person to hear talk about filmmaking, because she believes in it so passionately. And listening to her talk about this film, she said that in other cases of filmmaking, she might have been unsure about how, like, what to do or how to do a certain facet of it. And she's like, I want to learn, teach me, what have you. And she said for this film, She has never felt more comfortable or more confident. And every step of the way, she was like, I've got this. I know what to do. And I really think this film, and I love her films, I think this film is the culmination of everything she's done. And she has said that, and I think it's true on screen, and I think it's such a beautiful, beautiful piece of art.
Well,
and also just a necessary film for so many people to see.
great. Now I gotta go fucking watch, every Queen Sugar and When They See Us, and
Oh, I love Queen Sugar.
There's a whole bunch of her work.
Watch Middle of Nowhere. It's so
Is that the
good.
one with David
It's about,
Oyelowo? Yes. Okay.
Yes. And it's about prison system. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, another love story.
Yeah,
it's
it's one that it's on the list like so many other movies. I know, the never-ending list, for God's sake. We were just talking off mic about there's a German director, Christian Petzold, who's all of movies I have seen have loved, and I'm like, I got to see him more. And I looked, and there's so many. It's just like, for Christ's sake. All right. So anyway, that was Origin. As you can tell by the way that we gushed, Megan and I really liked it a lot. And coming up next, I was going to just piggyback right into a movie I didn't like so much, but I'll save that for spoiler later. This is, whoops, just spoiled how I feel. This is I.S.S. This is I guess you could say it's a science fiction movie, but it's really not. It just happens to take place on the International Space Station, which is what I.S.S. stands for.
Mm-hmm.
This stars Chris Messina, Ariana DeBose, John Gallagher Jr., and it is directed by Gabriella Coperthwaite, written by Nick Shafir, and here is your 2-sentence IMDb summary. Tensions flare in the near future aboard the International Space Station as a conflict breaks out on Earth. Reeling, the U.S. and Russian astronauts receive orders from the ground to take control of the station by any means necessary. Yeah. By the way, Russian call themselves cosmonauts. Anyway.
They do.
Yeah.
That is true.
Reminds me of my favorite line in Ghostbusters. What are you supposed to be? Some kind of a cosmonaut? Okay. Well, I mean, it's as simple as that. There's what appears to be a nuclear war happening in the United States. You've got 6 astronauts, 3 Americans, 3 Russians, in the space station, and they, do terrible karaoke the first night and talk about how we're all great friends, and it was painful. As somebody who just can't listen to people sing badly, you remember that period of time where they had Cameron Diaz sing in 5 movies in a row because. Do you remember that?
Because that's what you do in a rom-com.
Yeah, my best friend's wedding. She's like, she doesn't want to do karaoke because she's like, I have a terrible singing voice, and then she really does, and it's like, oh. And then she sang in so many movies, and it's just like, please don't do this to me. Anyway, so there's bad karaoke in this, and they're like, we are friends, even though we are Russia and you are the United States. They don't sound like that. And then, of course, I was like, well, I mean, I know what this movie's about already, but if you didn't know what it's about, you know what's coming.
Right. Yeah, they do drop a lot of heavy-handed hints as to what's to come.
And then Chris Messina, there's some kind of malfunction for some kind of antenna or transmitter or something, which is fake, of course. And well, there's been action between the United States and Russia, and Chris Messina, who is their mission commander, I guess, gets a note on his computer. It's like, don't tell anyone else. We're at war down here. You and the other astronauts have to. This is what the computer actually says. There's a voiceover for the computer. I'm just kidding. You and your other astronaut.
And it's whispering.
You and other astronaut friends have to take over the International Space Station. Fuck those people. I feel kind of strange.
They both.
Go ahead, Evan.
I was going to say, they both use the phrase by any means necessary. That's the order that each one of them is given. You must take control of the space station by any means necessary.
I am afraid I'm going to have to correct you on that. The Russians get at all costs. Yes.
Oh, excuse me.
You know why I made note? The only reason I remember that is because I made note of it. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, so Spike Lee wrote the first warning, command for the Americans, and then I don't know who what the one for the Russians. But every time I hear the phrase "by any means necessary," I think of Spike Lee and Malcolm X, because that's what so much of the book that he wrote. I think the book is called "By Any Means Necessary." Anyway, that's an aside. A very long aside. The Russians get the same message. And was anybody else surprised? I just have to ask this question right up front. Was anybody else surprised that John Gallagher Jr. turned out to be a weasel? Okay,
Nope.
good.
No, because he always plays a
He does.
weasel.
He always does.
He's good at it, but he always plays one. So I was like, oh, he's a bad guy right from the start.
Yeah. I was like, he probably doesn't even have daughters he needs to get home to. He'd be lying about that.
He's probably lying. I know.
He's
It's
like
funny you
Benny
said
in
that. I
Total
thought
Recall.
that too.
He's like, what? How many daughters does he have now? Does he have 4, 5, 2, 3?
Yeah. I got 5 kids to feed. Although I like how Betty in Total Recall's like, I'm not even married. It's like, so you don't need to be married to have kids, Benny. What the fuck? Who wrote this screenplay? Anyway.
That's true.
Yeah, so the Russians tell Chris Messina that there's some kind of malfunction and it can only be fixed outside, and he goes out to do it, and somebody whacks him with the arm, which you see. I think that there's just nothing in this movie that's surprising, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah, even the way that they sort of pretend kill Chris Messina, it's like, you want to ask the screenwriter and the director, have you never seen a movie before? When you don't see the only
Right.
time that I can think of off the top of my head where a character dies off screen and is really dead is No Country for Old Men. Every other time, especially in movies like this, when somebody does not die on screen, they are not dead. The one thing that surprised me, though, that when Chris Messina does come back toward the end of the movie, because one of the Russians, the one good Russian, rescues him. Actually, I guess 2 of the Russians are good, except one gets killed by John Gallagher Jr.
Yeah, the two of the Russians are good.
Oh, so 2 Americans are good and 2 Russians are good. Oh, so it's even. 66% of each. Good.
Yep.
66%. That's still a D. I mean, that's not great.
I know when you say 2/3, it sounds great, but then when you say 66%, it's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds less good.
Like I got a 72 on that quiz. Yeah, it's still a C-. What the fuck? So
not
anyway,
great.
so Chris Messina comes back and he's fighting with the bad Russian, and the bad Russian stabs him. And I was like, oh, did we really bring Chris Messina back just so we could kill him?
Just to kill him? Yeah, I thought
But
the same
then
thing.
he grabs the other Russian's knife and sticks it in the back of the guy's neck. And it's like, oh, we brought him back so he could die, but he could kill someone else first. Well, that's not as bad as I thought it was.
They could have the sweet embrace of death together in each other's arms.
The one thing that all humans share, death. And these 2 enemies get to share it together. How poetic. So, I mean, that's basically the gist. United States and Russia are at war. Both teams get messages, take over the space station. I mean, one of the things that surprised me is just that the astronauts would do that. I mean, these are people who've devoted their lives to science. I mean,
yep.
And
yeah,
that's what one of the women says. She's like, we're scientists here.
Yeah. Also, the movie treats, I think probably the biggest issue for me is that the movie treats this situation as something they wouldn't have possibly considered before. I have to think that having a place like the International Space Station where international groups need to cooperate with each other would have some type of protocol for what would happen if for some reason countries were at war with each other. I'm kind of surprised that would not have come up at all, or it just seems like it blindsides everybody. Like they haven't prepared for it. And yeah, they're scientists, so it is a little bit difficult to believe that they would immediately go through like the most cutthroat tactics. I mean, it seems like at least a few of them have a military background, so it seems like they kind of would have some like I don't know, tactical training or impetus maybe to carry out the orders, but I don't know. I think this movie like had a decent premise, but just really not very interesting execution. I think what would have been more interesting and I'll give Shauna credit for this because she was Dr. Chrising it as we were watching it to use a
Yeah.
callback. It would have been more interesting if they told each other right away, hey, we got, we got this order to take over, we got this order to take over, we're not going to do it. But then like something happened where like, somebody didn't trust somebody or something like, maybe the Russians saw, they looked out the window and saw that Russia was like on fire, and then like somebody got angry and it broke down from there versus like, oh, we're going to try and sneak around each other. And then I don't know, it just didn't make it as interesting, I think, for them to just take the most obvious route. Like you guys said, it's not very surprising. It doesn't really do anything that's like interesting, down to Chris Messina. Okay, he didn't die because we didn't see him die. Oh wait, he's back. Oh no, wait, he's dead.
Yeah. Can we stop?
It's just, I feel like it was a lot of moments like that were just kind of frustrating. I think the one thing for me that kind of surprised me in a good way was that you referred to him, Dave, as the good Russian. I always mispronounce his name, Pilo
Okay.
Asbeck. He normally plays a villain, so it was
Yep.
actually kind of nice to see him play the conflicted one, who was like, first, he cuts the wire, and then he very quickly regrets that and is very quick to kind of turn on the other Russian guy, played by Costa Ronan, and he defects.
There you
And
go.
goes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I kind of talked over you. Sorry. Stop putting Chris Messina in bad movies. Okay. Megan, what did you think of I.S.S.?
Well, I didn't think it was a bad movie.
Oh,
I liked it.
it's the Andromeda strain all over, except reversed.
Except I hated
Right.
the Andromeda
For those of you who are listening at home,
yeah,
check out our Patreon, $5 a month.
that's right. Where I shit all over the Andromeda
It's all
strain.
over the Andromeda strain.
All over. Yeah, no, I mean, like, listen, I hear what you both are saying, and the thing of it is, the funny thing, I don't disagree. Like, it is very predictable, and I think there are things it could have done better. I love Ariana DeBose. I think she's great here. I love, and this is a little character detail, but I have to think it has something to do with Gabriella Caperthwaite, because she directed Blackfish documentary on SeaWorld and the inhumane treatment of orcas. And Ariana DeBose's character Kira is very delicate with the mice who she's testing on, sadly, unfortunately, but she's very sweet to them. She's taking them out of their container and very gingerly putting them into their new home on the space station. And she's really invested in them, which is kind of lovely. And to me, I was like, oh, we're getting a window into the type of person Kira is. She's really sweet. She's really compassionate. And I think it's interesting because she has a military background. And I think that's an interesting contrast to, oh my God, what's his face? Gallagher. John Gallagher. What is his name?
Yep, that's right.
Thank you. Yeah, because he's also in the military, he's a veteran, but is currently in the military, but he's very much like, we got to follow orders. We got to go by the book. Whereas Kira's like, no, let's wait a minute. Like, you know these people. I don't know these people. So let's talk it out. And yeah, and like you said, Evan, Pilu aspect, I'm not usually a fan of him. I think he should play non-villains more because I thought he was great in this. I really liked him in a way I've never really liked him before. I think he's great. I think Chris Messina is always great. I wish he had been in this more, but I still think he's good. It is so I liked the acting. I like the premise. I like a chamber piece where everyone's, very confined and, it's just like, what are we going to do? How are we going to survive? I like that kind of a premise. But it was weird to me because all I kept thinking about was 2010, where this happens in 2010. And they're all like, and they're supposed to be separate. They're not supposed to take, control of anything. They're just supposed to separate and not interact. And then Roy Scheider's like, fuck this. We're going to work together and we're going to talk. And they're all like, yeah, we're scientists. What are we doing? We're going to work together. So it was kind of surprising to me that there was so much kind of secrecy and subterfuge, and not like, hey, let's just hash this all out and be
Yeah.
upfront about it. That seems like an odd choice. So on the one hand, I like that it's like, oh, we're all friends, we're all buddy buddy. Oh shit, now we're not. But at the same time, because they're scientists, it's like, no, shouldn't they be talking about things, openly and rationally and working together? So it is kind of an odd choice. So I did overall like this, but I think it could have been better. I think there are some missteps along the way.
Some modest tweaks, I think, could have turned this into a better movie.
Yes, I agree.
I can think this is. Oh, Evan, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because I don't think it's bad. Like, I didn't hate it, but I feel like with just some small kind of modifications, it could have gone for me, from an okay movie to like a really good movie.
I must be getting more forgiving.
Yeah, I liked it, but I agree with
I
that.
must be getting more forgiving in my old age too, because even though I was shitting all over this, I didn't hate it either. I mean, it is watchable. I think, and this is not a joke, let's Dr. Chris this for a moment. I think that one way you could have improved this greatly, you were just talking about I can't pronounce his name properly, Pilo Asbeck. You're talking about him and how he usually plays a bad dude, when in this one, he's kind of the good guy. Have Chris Messina play the John Gallagher part, and have John Gallagher play the Chris Messina part. That would have put a whole different spin on this. Chris Messina as a bad guy, I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right, on a mustache and everything.
Exactly.
I mean, come on. Sorry, part of the way there.
Although he does kind of become and I can't say I blame him, but he does go off the wall and get unhinged when he's like, "Where's Veronica?" And he's like screaming, and he's all like getting violent and stuff. Like, so I'm just saying, I don't know if he's a straight up total good guy.
Well, I mean,
Well,
his girlfriend
definitely
had
not.
her head bashed in by one of his colleagues, so there was that. Yeah.
Totally. I'm not saying, like I said, I totally understand, but I'm also like,
Yeah.
he's also,
Here's a question about the head bashing. The John Gallagher Jr. character. Do you think that he legit thought they were being played because of the node 0, or he didn't think there was node 0, or do you think he just wanted to kill anyway and was already like just looking for an excuse to take
Door number
one of them
2.
out?
I think it's weirdly more complex than that. I think he very much intentionally lied about the nodes, so he wanted to take them out. But I do simultaneously think he thought Veronica was a threat to all of them. So I think he was trying to disarm her, but also he was trying to take them all out.
Well, he disheaded her,
Okay.
really. I mean,
Well,
I
he didn't
know, but I was
decapitate
just
her.
trying to. It was, he bashes her. Listeners, he bashes her in the back of the head with what? It's big, whatever it is. I don't remember.
It is big, yeah.
Yeah. It's like a tank, like a gas tank or something like that. I don't know. Or trash can.
Something that even in
large and
something
metal.
that even being weightless has mass. So
yes,
when swung with the appropriate amount of force, force equals mass times acceleration. So,
look at that! You're getting a science lesson too while you're here.
We do all kinds of things, and
that's how we do.
We correct our co-hosts unnecessarily, like I did. We talk about, basic concept of physics, which you should remember from like 10th or 11th grade whenever you took that.
Right. Yeah. Some like real high school
so
physics.
2 check marks for me this week. So I also, Megan, like your interpretation that A, he was lying about the nodes thing, but B, also thought Veronica was a threat. I can buy that explanation. Yeah. But
thanks.
But I think that
he still overreacted, though. By the way.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean, yeah.
That whole thing with the sandwich too, where he's making the sandwich menacingly with the knife.
Yeah.
That was a tense scene.
Yeah, it was tense. And Ariana DeBose was like, I would like a sandwich, please. He's like, oh, you can take one of the plastic knives. She's like, no, that's the only knife that's going to do it for me.
Yeah. I've never been so tense watching a sandwich being made.
Oh, I know. And then when she tapped the mayo container 3 times on the side to signal to Pilo Asbeck, I was like, oh my God.
I didn't even realize that's what she was doing. I thought she was pretending that
Yeah.
she couldn't get the jar open, and she was going to hand it to John Gallagher Jr. and then try to take the knife, which is not what happens.
No.
So, yeah.
Yep. Then they teamed up and strangled the shit out of
Boy,
him.
did they.
Yeah.
0G
That was actually a
strangulation.
pretty good death scene, I have to say. You know,
Yeah. It's
kind of.
disturbing.
Mhm.
I really
It's a good
thought
one.
that he was going to get the good old Pilu was going to get it, but that whole flip over the back of the flip that she does, Ariana DeBose does, to get on the other
Yes.
side and then strangle John Gallagher Jr. Yeah. I've now realized what it is, why I always use the actors' names, because their characters aren't interesting enough to remember. Sorry.
Oh, see, I know Veronica and Kira.
I can't remember their...
I'm just terrible with names. That's why
Veronica's
I have a
the
hard time.
only character's name I can really remember. And I guess I can remember Nikolai because every Russian movie has a character named Nikolai. Or
Yeah, it's a common name.
every American movie with a Russian in it has a character
Yes.
named Nikolai.
Yeah, it is very
So.
common. Yeah. Speaking of names, oh, well, actually, this has nothing to do with names, but this is a small thing, but again, it's a nice detail. I was very excited to see this. I really like when Kira, Ariana DeBose, is talking to Chris Messina over the intercom, and they're talking about, and she's been pretty guarded about her life, and she's opening up about her ex-partner, and he says something about a boyfriend, and she's like, nope, no boy. And he's like, well, I'm a real idiot. And I love that. I love that he's like calling out his own, heteronormativity, and she's queer in this, and Ariana DeBose is queer in real life. So I just really like that. It's a nice little touch because not everybody's straight, and I like that.
That's true. Not everybody is straight.
That's right.
Yeah, I love Chris Messina. I don't know. There aren't a lot of actors I'm just like, I really like this guy. Guy in this case. I really like Chris.
I mean, he's a
I
great
really
actor.
like Chris Messina. I always have, even in bad movies. And there's this movie he's in with I can't remember her name right now. She's in every indie movie. Anyway,
Are you talking about with? Oh no, never mind.
28 Hotels or 28 Nights or so. It's where these two people meet up once a year on a quote business trip unquote and bone in a hotel, and they're both married, of course. And it's just it's the kind of movie Evan would hate because Evan doesn't like characters who do infidelity as like a conflicted thing. And these two characters, of course, are very conflicted. And it's like, well, I mean, you're still meeting up every year to bone. You can't be that conflicted. So yeah.
That's true.
Like, I'm conflicted except when it comes to the sex part. That part I like. So yeah. That's actually a conversation. No, it's not a conversation they have in the movie. So okay, do we have more thoughts about? I was going to say Origin. We should go back to that. Do we have more thoughts about I.S.S?
I think the visuals are great here.
It does look good.
I think it looks really good. And yeah, like I said, I love the cast. Like, you love Chris Messina, and I do like him tremendously. I love Ariana DeBose. I love everything she's in. I think she's always great. She's always captivating. Yeah, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this far more than you two. Yeah, which was kind of nice since I didn't enjoy the Andromeda Strain.
Yeah. Well, it's.
But yeah, I like this.
Okay. Well, Megan liked it. We got to correct your sci-fi taste, I guess. No, I'm just kidding.
I have impeccable.
I'm sure you do.
taste.
I actually don't really know what your sci-fi taste is. I know that you like a good dystopian drama.
I do. Dystopian's my favorite.
Favorite? Do I have a favorite?
Yeah.
I think weird sci-fi is my favorite. Unexplained things happening. Everything's explained in this movie.
Yeah, no, dystopian. The reason why I say dystopian especially is because, like, if somebody says like, "Oh, it's a dystopian," I'm in. I don't need to know anything else.
You could make the argument that this is the beginning of a dystopian.
Yes, exactly, because especially the way it ends with the way that Kira and Pilu, whatever his Russian name is in the movie. What?
You're right.
Alexei.
Thank you. Kira and Alexei. Thank you. Yeah, the way that they're like, where are we going to go? I don't know.
Yeah, fuck it. We got to get out of here. Right. Otherwise, people are just going to keep hounding us. So I think one of my biggest things about this movie, and I was dwelling on this because I was reading a thread the other day about how, for anyone who's rich who thinks they're going to escape to space if the like planet's burning, like you take the ISS for example, like it takes a million people. It takes so many people on the ground to make the ISS viable for anyone to be
Yes.
living up there and have anything going on. And like I think they said in the movie that the internet sucks. And I think I was reading in that same thread, like the internet is crap up there. So it's
Mhm.
like for all the things that the people on the ground have to do to support the ISS, including in this movie, turn on the thrusters so it doesn't fall out of the friggin' sky.
Yep.
Like, what strategic advantage does it have taking over the space station if it's useless basically without the people on the ground? Like,
That
what are
is
they
an excellent
gaining by taking
question.
over the space station?
And that is why Evan has been hired by the makers of ISS to write the sequel. Just turn on the goddamn thrusters already. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
a latent thought, but it's just something that I've been kind of like simmering about as we've talked.
Nuts.
No, it's a really good thought because, sometimes less information is better because it adds, some mystery and it lets you piece things together. But I think in this case,
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, what is the goal? Why?
Yeah, what I mean, aside from we know there's that radiation experiment that's being conducted to
Yes.
treat radiation poisoning, but I don't know that that was at the forefront of their thinking. I don't think they said take over the International Space Station and get that radiation research. They just said take it over and
Right.
end the experiments. I think in the American message that we read, it's
Hmm.
like terminate experiments, take over space station at all
Yeah.
costs,
Right. Right.
or at any
Right.
means necessary, whatever the
It's
hell they
one of
say,
them.
Dave.
One of them says one of them says the other. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that part. But yeah, you got to have people on the ground to run the fucking thing. Man, we're just poking holes in this motherfucker the whole way through. Turn on the thrusters. Also, in space, no one can hear you scream, so there was way too much stuff outside. Now, granted, of course, you're going to hear his radio and stuff like that, but you hear the arm hit him, like the arm that you use to grab stuff when you're out in space. Anyway,
That's why
The
gravity
grabber
is
arm.
so disturbing and unnerving because it's all silent,
yes, that's right.
as it
Mhm.
would be.
And well, that's why 2001 is so creepy in those moments.
Yes. Same thing. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. 2001 did it first. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's whatever this movie's called, I.S.S.
Whatever this
Yeah.
movie's name is.
What a missed opportunity, in my estimation. Megan did not feel the same way. That's fine. We often have differing opinions here on Spoiler Piece, which is why it's the best show in podcasting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go over this real quick. I think, Megan, it's safe to say that you and I would absolutely recommend Origin.
Oh my God. Hell yes.
I would say even if it's not your kind of movie, which I know a lot of people don't want to watch things about like race and and that's fine. But this movie is special.
I agree.
I think it sort of transcends all of those um, monikers you could throw at it. Transcends drama, transcends race drama, transcends romance. It's just kind of
Hmm.
pretty much a perfect movie in my estimation. And then ISSS, ISS. Why did I have three S's?
I
The
don't know.
movie has made me. It's starting to make me go crazy. Oh, one thing did surprise me. Now they may have been talking about it when I got up to go to the bathroom at the beginning of the movie, but when John Gallagher Jr. starts speaking fluent Russian at the end, I was like, "Oh, really?" So I don't know. And Ariana DeBose, of course, also spoke Russian, but she didn't tell anybody she did. And then the Russian guy who's been pretending he doesn't speak English speaks English. They all speak the other's language.
Well, Ariana DeBose,
Does she say
sorry
that she
to
does?
explain that, but Ariana DeBose
Mhm.
says early on that she doesn't speak Russian very well and she speaks it a little bit. The line she keeps saying to Pilu or Alexei is the line that Veronica said to her. And that's why she keeps
Yes.
saying it.
Oh,
That's why she's trying to like He
Yeah.
keeps repeating it, so he'll side with her, so they can team up.
And that was actually Veronica and Alexei had that as a phrase that they
Yes.
used together. So that was like another. It was like, we must work together or whatever the phrase was.
Mhm.
She knew it would work for him on multiple levels, both as a
Exactly. Yep.
callback to his relationship with Nika, and also like a call to to
Well, I guess
arms.
as you
Sidebar, I liked Nika and Alexei's friendship. It was really sweet. Anyway, sorry, Dave. Please continue.
I was just going to
Yes, me
say
too.
that maybe I should pay more attention to movies that aren't doing it for me. But I did like the
Maybe.
twist that Alexei, as it turns out, did speak English, because he sort of fumbled his way through English the entire movie, and then John Gallagher's like, "Well, I turned off the ventilation system that's going to keep us alive, and I know how to put it, turn it back on." And then Alexei just says in perfect English, "I know how to turn it on too." He's like, "Oops."
Mhm. Fucked with the wrong
Yep.
guy, dude.
And then there's the strangulation, which we mentioned. So, so I think this sounds like one. I mean, they're not enthused. One, yes, Megan would say yes. ISS is worth your time.
Yes, I would recommend it. Yes, it's got some flaws, but I still think it's an entertaining watch. Yes, I would recommend it.
Evan,
I probably lean more toward your mileage may vary, but I still enjoyed watching it. So I'm kind of like I lean more toward yes, see it, but like less enthusiastic yes. Kind of like it's there's definitely worse ways to spend your time.
yeah, I would put this in the category. This is a new category for me. It's a movie. That's the category I would put it in.
It's a movie.
It's
a movie.
movie.
So, anyway, I think that just about wraps it up for this episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. Thank you so much for joining us again. Want to give a big thanks to our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you so much for editing the show every week and making us sound great.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find
Thanks,
Spoiler
Otto.
Piece Theater anywhere you find podcasts. If you'd like to visit our website, that's spoilerpiece.com. On social media, we are Spoiler Piece Theater on Spoiler Piece, not Piece. I don't know what's my problem today. Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. You can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call.
At 862-21
And you can let us in to your thinking about ISS. And am I wrong? Is it not just a movie? Is it better than being a movie? I don't know. Well, okay. That's just for my, thing, listeners. But do call in. Let us know what you thought of ISS, because I would really love to know why these two are like, yeah, sure. And I'm just like, nah. Anyway. What, Megan?
To be fair, we did explain why we liked
No,
it.
that's true.
Or I did, and why Evan
Yeah.
kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah. I guess I'm having trouble wrapping my head around the whole thing. Yeah.
That's fair.
Anyway, we've talked about ISS enough. If you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, or you can rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That really helps boost our visibility. And if you really like the show, please consider joining Patreon. As I have mentioned several times, we watched The Patron's Choice this week, The Andromeda Strain, the 1971 sci-fi drama directed by Robert Wise, based on the Michael Crichton novel. And one of us was really, and two of us are like, eh. So those are technical terms for film criticism. And my name is Dave Riedel. I write for the Chicago Reader. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on all the social medias as Dave Sees Movies, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, Blue Sky.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm a co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky and Threads and all that jazz as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel. And I also want to make sure I don't forget to say thank you to our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs.
Thanks, Heather. And my name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm also co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm a member also of Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at OpinionS World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S.
That's it for this week, everybody. See ya. Bye.
Bye.